Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review and a little bit of a rant on the disappointing last entry in the Die Hard franchise, A Good Day to Die Hard, which is easily the dumbest title out of the entire series, but apparently it was going to be even dumber. I heard this is going to be called Die Hardest. Really? Die Hardest? That sounds like the name of a parody of Die Hard, not the name of an actual Die Hard sequel. But anyway, Die Hard 5 is a middling and subpar, disappointing dud of a action film. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a total dud. There are some moments where it does have some exciting, fun action sequences, but it's one of those movies, the more you think about it, the more the cracks start to show. It's a film that I saw in the theater when it came out, and I had some fun with it. And then I watched it on Blu-ray, and I was surprised by how much it didn't hold up. And then I rewatched it again for the purpose of this review, and I still had some fun with it, and I was more lenient on it the night after I watched it. I was like, you know what? I didn't hate this movie. But that doesn't mean it's a good film, because the more I think about it, it's not really that good of an action movie, let alone that good of a Die Hard sequel. And before I talk about the film some more, I want to do a little bit of a rant on the extended cut, because this extended cut is bullshit. It does nothing but make the film worse, and that's saying a lot. It cuts out all the scenes with Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Lucy McLean for reasons that I do not know to this day. So it takes away the happy ending that this film has, which was honestly kind of nice to see that John McClane at least was able to ride off into the sunset with his family, and some aspect of his dignity intact. But with Lucy's character and her whole sequences being cut out of the film in the extended version, you don't have that anymore. And then on top of that, there's nothing new that's added that's worth a shit. There's a little bit more violence in one of the sequences near the beginning, and that's fucking it. Everything else is extraneous or just completely worthless. So I don't understand why the fuck this was even made. It's a sham. It's a fucking joke. The extended cut of this film. Now the movie is directed by John Moore, which I don't understand why this guy got more directing jobs, especially as many as he has on his resume, because at best he's an average, mediocre director, especially in the action genre. And this film is no exception to that rule. He's such a frustrating director because there are moments where you're like, oh, that was well shot. That was actually a really well executed action sequence. Everything was shot in one uh, uh, sequence. It seemed like everything was set up in a way that was very exhilarating, very exciting. Did a good job putting you in the action and getting your adrenaline pumping. And then there's moments where you're like, what the fuck are you doing? This looks like a direct-to-video movie. So he's such a frustrating director, and he just leaves you wanting more in terms of more of his consistently good directing, not more of his piss poor directing and editing choices. Because there's honestly an entire sequence in this film that just is a total encapsulation of this guy's directing. It's the car chase in Moscow with John McClane. There are some shots that are awesome, that are really great. Then there are some shots that the camera's shaking all over the place for no goddamn reason. And so it's one of those things you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Keep the camera still, because when you were doing that, it was working really well. When you were shaking the camera around and trying to do a Bourne Identity film, it was fucking trash. It's the kind of movie where you want to smack the fucking director upside the head. Like, stop that. like seriously. And why was he the guy that was given the job? And what's also really frustrating about this director is his mindset about this movie. This is an actual quote from John Moore about Die Hard 5. He was asked by someone around the time of the film's release about the humor in the film, about whether or not Die Hard 5 was going to maintain the same sense of humor as the previous films in the series. And this is verbatim exactly what John Moore said in response. I don't know whether it's the post-financial crash or whatever, but I don't think people are in the mood for that bollocks anymore. People are well savvy to the cynical reheating of any product, any franchise. Any shit won't do. The bar's a bit higher. Speaking of bollocks, this whole statement is fucking bollocks. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Am I supposed to buy that shit, John Moore? Especially when it comes to your product? When it comes to this movie? I mean, come on, man. Really? They're not gonna like a cynical reheating of an old product. That's exactly what this fucking movie is! It's a reheating of an old fucking franchise. And then on top of that, he's saying all this shit about people are wise, they're savvy to that shit. Any shit won't do. The bar's a bit higher. And this film never raises the bar. This is the guy at the gym who's just lifting the bar and nothing else. What bar is he talking about? The one he went to after filming was over to blow most of his paycheck on fucking booze so he could forget the shitty job that he did directing this movie? I mean, what the fuck, John Moore? Really? So yeah, John Moore's direction is pretty poor. Like I said, there are moments where it's good, but way too often it's pretty bad. And you definitely could have gotten a much better director. Like, what about the guy who did Shoot 'Em Up? What about anyone? Literally anyone else probably would have been better. Except for, like, McG. Like, McCheeseburger probably would not have. But no, actually, McG probably would have done a better job. Anyway, another serious flaw this film has is its script by Skip Woods. Skip Woods skipped so many things when it comes to this script that were very vital to this film even getting off the ground, let alone being successful. For one, he did a piss poor job establishing Jack McClane as some kind of legitimate action hero, let alone someone who feels like a fleshed out character. You never really felt like he belonged, and that really falls on the screenwriter. On top of that, he did a bad job making John McClane feel like John McClane. Then you have the villains, which are so forgettable and one note. I don't even remember what their fucking names were. There was this one guy who was in love with carrots and was an annoying asshole. And then there was this other guy who was set up to be what seems like a good guy and an ally for the majority of the movie, but then you find out that he was really the main bad guy the entire time. And as a result, because of the fact that he was just a big setup for a twist that most audiences saw coming, this character was fucking useless. Any moment where he could have had to really establish himself or really solidify himself as a threat or a memorable presence when it comes to the villain was completely wasted because the script spent so much time playing this game of no, he's not who you think he is. They spent this entire running time almost trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And as a result, once he is the bad guy, he's got not really that much to do. And the film is almost over, so he's got next to no screen time or running time to really do much of anything. So, yeah, Skip Woods sucks as a screenwriter. And this is a prime example of that. The one-liners, there's really not much to say about them either. Most of them are pretty embarrassing, especially I'm on vacation. If I hear I'm on vacation one more fucking time out of Bruce Willis's craggy, saggy, wrinkled face, I'm going to flip my fucking shit. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. I really fucking hated that line. It wasn't funny the first time, let alone the 50th fucking time that it was said. I don't understand why that was considered to be such a great one-liner. Did it come from the same brainstorm as I Knew You'd Say That from Judge Dredd with Stallone? Because that was a dumb one-liner too that the writer thought was such a genius line that it needed to be said more than once. And it doesn't make any sense either because John McClane isn't on fucking vacation in this movie. He went to Russia to save his son. It has nothing to do with him being on vacation. So, yeah, as you can see, the more I talk about this movie, the more it turns into a rant. And you know what? It is a rant because this film, for the most part, except for a few action sequences, is a flaming fucking piece of shit. It's a good day to suck hard and to suck a hard dick. Because why the fuck would I want to watch this? Even when there are some action sequences that have some spectacle, have some weight to them, and they are done practically and it's not behind a green screen, that's very fleeting. It's like, it's one of those films like I watch it and it's palatable enough that after it's over, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. But then the more I think about it, I'm like, no, I don't like this. I don't like that. The villains suck. John McClane doesn't even feel like John McClane. Bruce Willis is running on half a fucking Die Hard battery for the entire running time. Jai Courtney is a joke, and he is about as charismatic as a fucking paper bag or a plastic bag blowing in the fucking wind. And did I mention how much the villains suck again? I actually got into a little bit. I didn't really get into a debate, but I replied to a subscriber of mine earlier talking about the villains in this movie. I'm like, they're not as bad as Timothy Olyphant. But the more I think about it, Timothy Olyphant was bad, but at least he was a memorable bad to me because he was a constipated fucking robot who always spoke through his teeth. None of these villains are memorable. I don't remember anything about any of them except for the one guy who liked fucking carrots. And I wanted John McClane to shove a carrot up his ass, but that never fucking happened because the script never even bothered to give you the pleasure of seeing John McClane kick this annoying guy's ass. So Skip Woods even skipped that. It was one of the simplest things. You have an annoying henchman, and he spends a majority of the film toying with your hero. You're waiting for the moment where the hero kicks his ass and puts him in his place. That doesn't happen. So yeah, the script sucks. Even though I like the idea of having John McClane in Russia, it's different. You're taking him into a completely unfamiliar territory, but it just doesn't do that much with it, other than maybe a little bit of some fun with the cab driver early on, the car chase, some of the action sequences, and the fact that they go to Chernobyl at the end. But other than that, I mean, you could have had this taken place anywhere. It didn't even have to be Russia. Could have been somewhere else in the US, some abandoned factory somewhere. The cinematography by Jonathan Sala, just eh. The editing by Dan Zimmerman, it was just as inconsistent as the directing. Sometimes the editing was fine. Then other times it was excruciatingly terrible, with choppy, quick cuts and all kinds of questionable bullshit. Then you have the performances by the cast. Bruce Willis, he doesn't have anywhere near the same energy or life that he did in the last film. This is at the point in time in his career where he really was slowing down and was starting to not give a shit and was just there for the money. And what's sad is there are glimmers. There are flickers of the old John McClane in this film, but they are very few and far between. So most of the time you got Bruce Willis just sleepwalking through the film, and that's just sad. You don't want to see Bruce Willis sleepwalking through a Die Hard movie. Sleepwalking through a direct-to-video movie or a Die Hard battery commercial where he's playing John McClane is one thing. But an actual Die Hard film that was released for theaters and had a budget behind it? No. Then you have Jai Courtney, who I always thought he was a jagoff and he sucked as an actor, and that's just more of the same here. I don't understand why he was cast. He doesn't even look anything like Bruce Willis, and he definitely doesn't have any of the same charisma. And you know what's sad is Bruce Willis on Half a Battery is still more of a badass in terms of his believability as one, and also more charismatic and engaging than Jai Courtney, who's here with all of his energy. I mean, that's saying a lot. And then you have Sebastian Koch, who plays Yuri Komarov. I felt bad for the guy because, you know what? The guy actually didn't do that bad of a job in terms of his performance. But the writing was so woefully inept, and it just gave him nothing to do as a character, nothing to sink his teeth into. His character was nothing but a setup for a twist that was fairly predictable, and then once he did become the villain, he did nothing really remotely memorable. And then you have Yulia Singir, who played his daughter, another useless fucking character and performance. There's this other guy named Alec. There's a Sergei Kolesnikov, who played Victor Shagarian. And that guy really wasn't really anything either. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, she had her bit part as Lucy. You have Cole Hauser in this. He plays a guy named Mike Collins, and he has like 3 scenes, and that's fucking it. And I don't really think there's anyone else that I really should even remotely bother talking about in terms of this cast list. And then the music, even the music by Marco Beltrami was a bit of a step down. I thought the score in Live Free or Die Hard was much better. And this seemed like it just recycled bits from that film. And I will say this, it's not a boring movie. It's 97 minutes. It's the shortest film in the Die Hard series. So it's not a film that really feels like it drags too much, despite the general disinterest in the overall story at a lot of points throughout the film. Because there's still some action set pieces that'll get your blood pumping enough to keep you involved for at least an hour and a half. But the problem is, it's a Die Hard film. The bar is higher, especially after the last film was such a surprise. I am not going to accept a lazy, half-assed job when it comes to a Die Hard sequel, and that's what this is. It's a lazy, fucking half-assed action movie. It's the kind of action film that you could see starring Chris Pine or whoever else that they're trying to shove down your throat as an action star, that has a lot of low effort, low energy in terms of the writing and in terms of the direction, and they just slap a title on it, put it out into theaters, dump it into January, the dead month, and call it a day and hope that they make some profit. And to me, Die Hard is a franchise that deserves more than that. So, yeah, the more I just think about this film, the more it just depresses me. The more it's just depressing. It's disappointing and depressing. But I don't really know what else to say about A Good Day to Die Hard, except you really aren't going to have a good day if you decide to sit down and watch this movie, even though there are some fun points. There are some good merits. I do like some of the action sequences. The sound editing is very loud and very bombastic. I do appreciate the sequences where John Moore actually does show some real talent and manages to shoot sequences that have a lot of really crazy shit going on, things exploding all in one location with gunfire and all this other stuff. And there's some cool shots, uh, and there's a lot of other stuff that is at least worth seeing if you're an action fan. But then there's so much other bullshit that it just makes it an ultimately pretty dull and just dire, die-hard film. I mean, when you have lines of dialogue that are dubbed with lines from the last film in the series, then you know that something has gone wrong. I mean, that's the perfect way to sum things up about this movie. Is John McClane doesn't even say yippee-ki-yay motherfucker on camera. It's dubbed. It's dubbed with the line delivery from one of the other films. So Bruce Willis couldn't even give enough of a fuck for this movie to say his most iconic line. So, yeah, if that's the case, then why should I give a fuck about A Good Day to Die Hard? But anyway, thanks for watching my conflicted review and rant on A Good Day to Die Hard. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.